His mom loved Hawaii, so Steven invested in a beachfront condo on Maui. He sends her there for the entire winter. She's in heaven, and so is he. First, she now loves that he's rich and tells everyone how generous he is. Second, he doesn't have to deal with her for 6 months of the year. Brilliant. In my own life, after a slow start, I began doing well in business but never seemed to make money with my stocks. In becoming aware of my money blueprint, I recalled that when I was young, each day after work, my dad would sit down at the dinner table with the newspaper, check the stock pages, slam his fist on the table, and shout, "Those stinking stocks!" He then spent the next half hour ranting about how stupid the whole system is and how you have a better chance of making money playing the slot machines in Las Vegas. Now that you understand the power of verbal conditioning, can you see that it's no wonder I couldn't make any money in the stock market? I was literally programmed to fail, programmed to unconsciously pick the wrong stock at the wrong price at the wrong time. Why? To subconsciously validate my money blueprint that said, stocks stink. All I can say is by digging out this massive toxic weed from my inner financial garden, I began getting inundated with more fruits. Virtually the day after I reconditioned myself, the stocks I chose began to boom, and I've continued to have amazing success in the stock market ever since. It seems incredibly strange, but when you really understand how the money blueprint works, it makes perfect sense. Again, your subconscious conditioning determines your thinking. Your thinking determines your decisions, and your decisions determine your actions, which eventually determine your outcomes. There are 4 key elements of change, each of which is essential in reprogramming your financial blueprint. They are simple but profoundly powerful. The first element of change is awareness. You can't change something unless you know it exists. The second element of change is understanding. By understanding where your way of thinking originates, you can recognize that it has to come from outside you. The third element of change is disassociation. Once you realize this way of thinking isn't you, you can separate yourself from it and choose in the present whether to keep it or let it go. Based on who you are today and where you want to be tomorrow, you can observe this way of thinking and see it for what it is, a file of information that was stored in your mind a long, long time ago and may not hold any truth or value for you anymore. The fourth element of change is reconditioning. We will begin this process in part 2 of the book, where we will introduce you to the mental files that generate wealth. Should you want to take this a step further, I invite you to attend the Millionaire Mind Intensive Seminar, where you will be led through a series of powerful experiential techniques that will rewire your subconscious on a cellular and permanent level, retraining your mind to respond supportively in terms of money and success. The elements of frequency and ongoing support are also important for lasting change to occur, so I've got another gift to help you. If you go to MillionaireMindBook.com and click on free book bonuses, you can subscribe to the Millionaire Mind Thought of the Week. Every 7 days you will receive a profound lesson that can assist your success. Meanwhile, let's go back to our discussion on verbal conditioning and the steps you can take now to begin revising your money blueprint. Steps for change: verbal programming. Awareness. Write down all the statements you heard about money, wealth, and rich people when you were young. Understanding. Write down how you believe these statements have affected your financial life so far. Disassociation. Can you see that these thoughts represent only what you learn and are not part of your anatomy and not who you are? Can you see that you have a choice in the present moment to be different? Declaration. Place your hand over your heart and say, what I heard about money isn't necessarily true. I choose to adapt new ways of thinking that support my happiness and success. Touch your head and say, I have a millionaire mind. The second influence, modeling. The second way we are conditioned is called modeling. What were your parents or guardians like in the arena of money when you were growing up? Did one or both of them manage their money well, or did they mismanage it? Were they spenders or savers? Were they shrewd investors, or were they non-investors? Were they risk takers or conservative? Was money consistently there, or was the flow more sporadic? Did money come easily in your family, or was it always a struggle? Was money a source of joy in your household, or the cause of bitter arguments? Why is this information important? You've probably heard the saying, monkey see, monkey do. Well, humans aren't far behind. As kids, we learn just about everything from modeling. Although most of us would hate to admit it, there's more than a grain of truth in the old saying, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. This reminds me of the story about a woman who prepares a ham for dinner by cutting off both ends. Her bewildered husband asks why she cuts off the ends. She replies, "That's how my mom cooked it." Well, it just so happened that her mom was coming for dinner that night, so they asked her why she cut off the ends of the ham. Mom replies, "That's how my mom cooked it." So they decide to call Grandma on the phone and ask why she cut off the ends of the ham. Her answer, "Because my pan was too small." The point is that, generally speaking, we tend to be identical to one or a combination of our parents in the arena of money. For example, my dad was an entrepreneur. He was in the home building business. He built anywhere from a dozen to 100 homes per project. Each project took a huge amount of capital investment. My dad would have to put up everything we had and borrow heavily from the bank until the homes were sold and the cash came through. Consequently, at the beginning of each project, we had no money and were in debt up to our eyeballs. As you can imagine, during this period, my dad was not in the best of moods, nor was generosity his strong suit. If I asked him for anything that cost even a penny, his standard reply after the usual, "What am I, made of money?" was, "Are you crazy?" Of course, I wouldn't get a dime, but what I would get was that "don't even think of asking again" glare. I'm sure you know the one. This scenario would last for about a year or two until the homes were finally sold. Then we'd be rolling in dough. All of a sudden, my dad was a different person. He'd be happy, kind, and extremely generous. He'd come over and ask me if I needed a few bucks. I felt like giving him his glare back, but I wasn't that stupid, so I just said, "Sure, Dad, thanks," and rolled my eyes. Life was good, until the dreaded day when he'd come home and announce, "I found a good piece of land. We're going to build again." I distinctly remember saying, "Great, Dad, good luck," as my heart sank knowing the struggle that was about to unfold again. This pattern lasted from the time I could remember, when I was about 6, until the age of 21, when I moved out of my parents' house for good. Then it stopped, or so I thought. At 21 years of age, I finished school and became, you guessed it, a builder. I then went on to several other types of project-based businesses. For some strange reason, I'd make a small fortune, but just a short time later, I'd be broke. I'd get into another business and believe I was on top of the world again, only to hit bottom a year later. This up and down pattern went on for nearly 10 years before I realized that maybe the problem wasn't the type of business I was choosing, the partners I was choosing, the employees I had, the state of the economy, or my decision to take time off and relax when things were going well. I finally recognized that maybe, just maybe, I was unconsciously reliving my dad's up and down income pattern. All I can say is thank goodness I learned what you're learning in this book and was able to recondition myself out of that yo-yo model and into having a consistently growing income. Today, the urge to change when things are going well and to sabotage myself in the process still comes up. But now there's another file in my mind that observes this feeling and says, "Thank you for sharing. Now let's get refocused and back to work." Another example comes from one of my seminars in Orlando, Florida. As usual, people were filing up to the stage, one by one, to get an autograph and say hello or thank you or whatever. I'll never forget one older gentleman because he came up sobbing. He could barely catch his breath and kept wiping his tears with his sleeve. I asked him what was wrong. He said, "I'm 63 years old and I've been reading books and going to seminars since they were invented. I've seen every speaker and tried everything they taught. I've tried stocks, real estate, and been in over a dozen different businesses. I went back to university and got an MBA. I've got more knowledge than 10 average men, yet I've never made it financially. I'd always get a good start but end up empty-handed, and in all those years, I never knew why. I thought I must just be plain old stupid until today. Finally, after listening to you and doing the processes, it all makes sense. There's nothing wrong with me, and I just had my dad's money blueprint stuck in my head, and that's been my nemesis. My dad went through the heart of the Depression era. Every day he would try getting jobs or selling things and come home empty-handed. I wish I would have understood modeling and money patterns 40 years ago. What a waste of time. All that learning and knowledge has been. He began to cry even harder. I replied, no way is your knowledge a waste of time. It has just been latent, waiting in a mind bank, waiting for the opportunity to come out. Now that you formulated a success blueprint, everything you've ever learned will become usable and you will skyrocket to success. For most of us, when we hear the truth, we know it. He started to line up and began breathing deeply again. Then a big grin came across his face. He gave me the biggest hug and said, thank you, thank you, thank you. Last I heard from him, everything was booming. He had accumulated more wealth in the last 18 months than in the past 18 years combined. I love it. Again, you can have all the knowledge and skills in the world, but if your blueprint isn't set for success, you're financially doomed. We often get seminar participants whose parents were involved in World War II or who lived through the Depression. Those people are often in shock when they realize how much their parents' experiences have influenced their beliefs and habits around money. Some spend like crazy because you could easily lose all your money, so you might as well enjoy it while you can. Others go the opposite route. They hoard their money and save for a rainy day. A word of wisdom. Saving for a rainy day might sound like a good idea, but it can create big problems. One of the principles we teach in another of our courses is the power of intention. If you are saving your money for a rainy day, what are you going to get? Rainy days. Stop doing that. Instead of saving for a rainy day, focus on saving for a joyous day or for the day you win your financial freedom. Then by virtue of the law of intention, that's exactly what you will get. Earlier, we said that most of us tend to be identical to one or both parents in the arena of money, but there's also the flip side of the coin. Some of us end up being exactly the opposite of one or both parents. Why would that happen? Do the words anger and rebellion ring a bell? In short, it just depends on how ticked off you were at them. Unfortunately, as little kids, we can't say to our parents, Mom and Dad, have a seat. I'd like to discuss something with you. I'm not fond of the way you're managing your money, or for the matter your lives, and therefore, when I become an adult, I'll be doing things quite differently. I hope you understand. Good night now, and pleasant dreams. No. It doesn't go quite that way. Instead, when our buttons are pushed, we generally freak out, and what comes out sounds more like, I hate you, I'll never be like you, when I grow up, I'm going to be rich, then I'll get whatever I want, whether you like it or not. Then we run to our bedroom, slam the door, and start pounding our pillow or whatever else is at hand to vent our frustration. Many people who come from poor families become angry and rebellious about it. Often, they either go out and get rich or at least have the motivation to do so, but there's one little hiccup, which is actually a big burp. Whether such people get rich or work their buns off trying to become successful, they're not usually happy. Why? Because the root of their wealth or motivation for money is anger and resentment. Consequently, money and anger become linked in their minds. And the more money such individuals have or strive for, the angrier they get. Eventually, the higher self says, I'm tired of being angry and stressed out. I just want to be peaceful and happy. So they ask the same mind that created the link what to do about the situation, to which the mind answers, if you want to get rid of your anger, you're going to have to get rid of your money. So they do. They subconsciously get rid of their money. They overspend or make a poor investment decision or get a financially disastrous divorce, or they sabotage their success in some other way. But no matter, because now these folks are happy, right? Wrong. Things are even worse because now they're not just angry, they're broke and angry. They got rid of the wrong thing. They got rid of the money instead of the anger, the fruit instead of the root. Meanwhile, the real issue is, and always was, the anger between them and their parents. And until that anger is resolved, they will never be truly happy or peaceful, regardless of how much money they have or don't have. The reason or motivation you have for making money or creating success is vital. If your motivation for acquiring money or success comes from a non-supportive root, such as fear, anger, or the need to prove yourself, your money will never bring you happiness. Why? Because you can't solve any of these issues with money. Take fear, for instance. During my seminars, I asked the audience, how many of you would cite fear as your primary motivation for success? Not many people put up their hand. However, then I asked, how many of you would cite security as one of your main motivators for success? Almost everyone puts up his or her hand, but get this. Security and fear are both motivated by the same thing. Seeking security comes from insecurity, which is based in fear. So will more money dissolve the fear? You wish, but the answer is absolutely not. Why? Because money is not the root of the problem, fear is. What's even worse is that fear is not just a problem, it's a habit. Therefore, making more money will only change the kind of fear we have. When we were broke, we were most likely afraid we never make it or never have enough. Once we make it, however, our fear usually changes to, what if I lose what I've made? Or everyone's going to want what I have, or I'm going to get creamed in taxes. In short, until we get to the root of this issue and dissolve the fear, no amount of money will help. Of course, given a choice, most of us would rather worry about having money and losing it than not having money at all. But neither are overly enlightened ways to live. As with those of us driven by fear, many people are motivated to achieve financial success to prove they are good enough. We'll cover this challenge in detail in part 2 of this book. But for now, just realize that no amount of money can ever make you good enough. Money can't make you something you already are. Again, as with fear, the always having to prove yourself issue becomes your habitual way of living. You don't even recognize it's running you. You call yourself a high achiever, a hard driver, determined, and all these traits are fine. The only question is why. What is the root engine that drives all this? For people who are driven to prove they are good enough, no amount of money can ease the pain of that inner wound that makes everything and everyone in their life not enough. No amount of money or anything else for that matter will ever be enough for people who feel they are not good enough themselves. Again, it's all about you. Remember, your inner world reflects your outer world. If you believe you are not enough, you will validate that belief and create the reality that you don't have enough. On the other hand, if you believe you are plenty, you will validate that belief and create plenty of abundance. Why? Because plenty will be your root, which will then become your natural way of being. By unlinking your money motivation from anger, fear, and the need to prove yourself, you can install new links for earning your money through purpose, contribution, and joy. That way, you'll never have to get rid of your money to be happy. Being a rebel or the opposite of your parents is not always a problem. To the contrary, if you were a rebel, often the case with second-born children, and your folks had poor money habits, it's probably a good thing that you are their opposite. On the other hand, if your parents were successful and you're rebelling against them, you could be in for serious financial difficulties. Either way, what's important is to recognize how your way of being relates to one or both of your parents in the arena of money. Steps for change. Modeling. Awareness. Consider the ways of being and habits each of your parents had around money and wealth. Write down how you may be identical or opposite to either of them. Understanding. Write down the effect this modeling has had on your financial life. Disassociation. Can you see this way of being is only what you learn and isn't you? Can you see you have a choice in the present moment to be different? Place your hand over your heart and say, what I modeled around money was their way. I choose my way. Touch your head and say, I have a millionaire mind. The third influence, specific incidents. The third primary way in which we are conditioned is by specific incidents. What did you experience when you were young around money, wealth, and rich people? These experiences are extremely important because they shape the beliefs, or rather the illusions, you now live by. Let me give you an example. A woman who was an operating room nurse attended the Millionaire Mind Intensive Seminar. Josie had an excellent income, but somehow she always spent all of her money. When we dug a little deeper, she revealed that when she was 11 years old, she